So today I'm going to teach you how to make a really healthy enchilada. We're going to first start by making our tortillas, and we're going to get them softened. What I want to do is I want to take my tortilla, dip it in some water, and then put it into my skillet. This is going to make it easy for us to roll our filling in. Okay, so what I would do is I'm using a skillet, but if you were going to do this on the stove, you just set it to medium heat, and you want them nice and pliable. And I've already done about 6 of them here. I'm going to finish the rest of these, and I'm going to put them under my towel here to keep them nice and warm so that when they're ready to be filled, they'll be nice and pliable. Okay, so I'll do one more here and just show you. You're going to just dip it in some water again on medium heat and just let it cook for maybe 20 to 30 seconds on each side. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to fill my tortillas with a lot of nice vegetables. So I'm going to use some red bell pepper. Okay, and I'm just going to make these into little dices. I'm going to be using red bell pepper, some yellow bell pepper, some spinach. You could even throw in some mushrooms, which would be delicious. And then some onion as well. So I'm going to get my skillet started. I'm going to add a little bit of water to my skillet. And I have my skillet set for about 250. I'm going to go ahead and add my vegetables, get those starting. Okay, all I'm doing is just taking out these seeds here and cutting my bell pepper up. You could even leave them like a fajita style too if you didn't want to cut them into small dices. Fajita style is just kind of like these little long strips of bell peppers. So don't feel like you have to spend a lot of time cutting stuff up if you don't want to work that hard in the kitchen. I'm using about half a cup of bell pepper for each here. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and cut up some zucchini. And zucchini is really great because it's mostly water. So it's going to absorb a lot of the spices that you add to your ingredients. And in my house, we use zucchini for replacement of pasta noodles. You can turn zucchini into pasta noodles. It's pretty fun. And the way you do that is you just take your peeler and you just peel little thin strips of the zucchini off. Okay, I'm going to add some onion here. I'm going to use about half this onion. What I'm looking for is about 3 cups of vegetables, any vegetable of your choice. Onion, of course, is always nice in Mexican dishes, so we're going to add that. And then we'll add some spinach too, and we'll add that toward the end because spinach is going to wilt down quite a bit because it's filled with a lot of water. Right, and I'm going to use my green onions and my cilantro toward the end. So I'm just going to use up my spinach here, let this all cook. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and add my seasoning now. I have a 1/4 teaspoon of cumin, some basil, some sea salt, and some garlic powder. And this is going to really bring out the flavors of our vegetables. And you'll notice too, a lot of these dishes are very low sodium. So for those of you who are trying to cut down on your sodium intake, these dishes are perfect. Okay, so what I'm doing right now is called almost like a dry sautéing. I'm using the vegetable moisture with the water that's already present in the pan to kind of weep out the vegetables, and it's just kind of steaming them. So we're going to get a really nice, and I'm also going to bake this, so I don't have to be perfect about making sure my vegetables are totally done. Okay, so that looks really good right there. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and start the layering process of our enchiladas. So I'm going to take my Pyrex. This is about a 9 by 13 pan. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to add some of our petite diced tomatoes. It calls for about 15 ounces of them. You could also use your favorite salsa, but I really like these. These are petite diced fire roasted with garlic, so they have a lot of flavor. But don't worry about any kind of tomato sauce that you want to use. You could even use a tomato sauce or salsa, like I said. So this just adds a little bit more flavor to your dishes. Okay, and we're going to add a little bit of our cheese sauce. This cheese sauce you can find on our website. We have one called simple cheese or any kind of non-dairy plant-based cheese. This is one of my favorites. We use sun-dried tomatoes and some cashews and lemon juice, and so it's just really nice. And so we're going to add some of that to the bottom of our pan here. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my corn tortillas here, and I'm just going to get them ready here to add my filling. Okay. And if you wanted to add some more kick to this, you could add some cayenne pepper to it, or you could even add a little bit of some green chilies. It should be nice as well. Okay, we're just going to roll these up like so. And I'm going to go ahead and fill the rest of the pan the same way. Okay, so I'm done rolling my enchiladas, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a topping. I'm going to use the same skillet of what I prepared my other vegetables in, and in fact, if I have any left over, you're totally welcome to add it to this next topping. Okay, so I have 1 can of my black beans. I rinsed this, and I want to make sure that I get all of that residue off of the canned residue. And then I have 1 cup of my frozen corn. I'm going to add the remaining about 3/4 can of my diced tomatoes. I'm going to add some lime juice to this, and it's going to be a nice hint of Mexican. Limes are used a lot in Mexican dishes, so we're going to give this a nice squeeze just to bring out the flavor of the tomatoes. And I like to take a fork too if I have a lot of juice left over, and just take my fork and kind of work it to get that juice out. So I'm using the juice of about a tablespoon or half of a lime, depending on how big your lime is. And then I like to add some more garlic powder to this. I'm using about 1/4 teaspoon of that, and then some cumin too, same amount. Feel free to use more of this if you want more of that cumin kick. And I'm gonna use a little bit of this Bragg's liquid aminos, and or you could use soy sauce. This is a nice salt alternative. It has a lot of great flavor, low sodium, no MSG. I like this. And then we're just going to use just about a pinch of salt. Okay, so I'm going to turn this back on to about 300, and I'm going to give this a nice stir. This is going to be the topping to our enchilada bake. And you're welcome to use this cheese as well in here, so I'm going to pour some of this cheese in here. And we'll save a little bit for the topping. This is actually a really nice dish if you didn't want to use enchiladas to just put on top of a baked potato. And that's one thing too with these recipes, is you can repurpose them for other things. You may start off with enchiladas, but you may end up with something totally different. You could even use this as a chip dip, which is nice. Okay, so we're going to let that heat through. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just do some green onions, or scallions as some people call them in other parts of the country. So this is ready to marinate a little bit. And while that's marinating, go ahead and turn your oven on to 350. And when this is all done, we're going to put that in the oven for about an hour, or until everything's kind of bubbling. Because you've cooked this pretty much, you don't need to really heat it a long time. But if you want a more crispy and crunchy, then I would go for a longer cooking time. I'm just going to take a couple of the tops of these green onions for decoration. And I'm going to do some cilantro as well. And cilantro, of course, is a wonderful herb. When you're working with herbs, you don't really want to use your knife really rough against them. So I like to gently just cut them, because you don't want to bruise your herbs. So I'm just taking my knife and just slowly and gently cutting them, because bruising them, you'll kind of lose some of the flavor. But this is nice just for garnish too, and you can add fresh cilantro after it's all done too, but I like to cook it all together. Okay, so we have our nice sauce here. Everything looks good. Looks like we're ready to go. Add it to our enchiladas here. All right, so I'm just gonna pour this over the top of my enchilada. The reason we put the tomatoes and some cheese on the bottom of this is I'm not using any oil, so we don't want it to stick. And that's a really good tip too. So you don't have to use oil or spray any oil if you don't want to. You just add some of your mixture to it and it will stay nice and wet for you. You don't have to worry about scraping everything off the bottom. Okay, and I'm gonna just add a few more of my vegetables that I filled it with to give it a nice little look here. Okay, and I'm gonna just top it off with a little bit of cilantro. And then we'll put this in the oven at 350 and bake it for about an hour or until everything's nice and bubbly. So I finished my enchilada bake and it turned out great. The flavor is amazing. I left it in the oven for about 30 minutes. Depending on your oven temperature, you want to just make sure and see if it's bubbly because you've pretty much cooked this before you put it in the oven. You're just heating it through. So I like to use the leftover sauce that I had previously, and I just add a little bit of that to my enchilada. You can add some non-dairy sour cream, add some avocado, and you have a really wonderful meal. So enjoy!